What's up, y'all? If this looks at all familiar to those of you that saw the Iron Claw video and saw the outro of that video, that's definitely for a reason. I'm filming this literally right after I filmed the outro of that. So just like I did for my last video, this is basically going to be a kind of behind the video type thing. We're going to be talking a little bit about my deeper thoughts on the Iron Claw that I couldn't fit into my video essay, and talking some about my whole process behind creating the video and how I challenged myself in it and how I made everything work. Okay, so I'll lead right off with my additional thoughts on the video. I have quite a few, so let's get right into it. And if I'm looking over here, it's because my computer is over here and it has all of my notes about the stuff that I want to talk to you guys about, my additional thoughts and whatnot. So let's get into it. Okay, so first big thought of the film that I wasn't able to put into the video is about the narration. Now, one of the first things my brain kind of latched onto in the Iron Claw was trying to figure out what the narration meant on a deeper level. If that sounds kind of crazy, it is, but for me, I felt like this had to have some deeper meaning because every single brother in this film gets narration. You have narration from Kevin, narration from David, narration from Mike, and narration from Carrie. And all of these characters get narration in the film, which I don't think is a mistake. I think that's a very purposeful decision. So it already got my brain turning. And then on top of that, Kevin's narration is the only narration that doesn't come in a, end of life note context. His narration is kind of omniscient. It's kind of out of the context of the film, whereas the narration of all the other brothers comes literally from them reading their, basically final note that they wrote before the end of their lives. And I think this is representative kind of in a bigger picture of how many men only find a voice for their struggles after it's gone too far. The story is, of course, about Kevin, but it's also about Kevin finding his voice and the tragedy of how his brothers weren't able to voice their struggles before it was too late. So I think that the choice to have Kevin narrating kind of as someone who made it out of the terrible generational cycles and curses present within the film is really pointed and frames his brothers as, really a tragic tale. Kind of the whole idea that, they had all these struggles underneath the surface. They wanted to speak up about them, but Kevin was the only one who was able to find his voice before, it got too late and it went too far. And the whole thing with the narration is actually a really interesting jumping off point to another topic I wanted to cover, which is how the film builds a sense of real dread in its story. So when we first hear Kevin's narration, as I kind of already mentioned, it automatically keys us into this idea that Kevin will be the only brother to make it out. He talks about everything in the past tense. Me and my brothers loved wrestling. We trusted our father. Our family was cursed, but we didn't believe it. It sort of preps you for the darkness that is going to be the film, and it stays with you for the entire first act, which I would say is very happy and comforting in a lot of ways. And there are, of course, other moments in that first half of the film, especially that feel very, dread-inducing, very, very much like something is looming and there is darkness coming for the Von Erich family. One scene that really stuck out to me was the choice to have a needle drop of Blue Oyster Cult's Don't Fear the Reaper. Very on the nose, but that song comes right as the brothers are about to wrestle, really all together for the first time. It's David's in-ring debut in a sense. And so I think it's very, very deliberate to drop that song there because, of course, wrestling is kind of what brought the family down. It was this lifestyle of perfection and of trying to be the best instilled by their father. And so I think it's very, very pointed to include that song in that scene in particular. There's also the whole idea that Carrie only comes back to the family and by proxy back to wrestling because Jimmy Carter literally as president says the US is going to boycott the Olympics. Of course, that is a real event that happened, but in the context of the film, it feels almost like the universe is actively working against the family. And I think that lends a real almost cosmic sense of doom to the story here. It feels so much larger than life and like it's impossible for this family to escape this supposed curse placed upon them. And of course, on top of that, some of the actors have even compared this to a Greek tragedy in a sense, which I can totally see. The Iron Claw carries with it these monumental levels of emotionality and character depth that really lend a sense of dread that is Shakespearean almost to the story. I know Shakespeare is not from Greece. I just want to make that clear. I'm just saying that's like very, very play-like, in its grandiosity. And so this is kind of another choice that got me wondering, why is this film so bent on creating this atmosphere of looming dread? What's the larger purpose of that in the message? And at this point, I would say that I believe all this is done to kind of show us a progression from falsely believing that this family is cursed to actually showing, the root of the problems here, why all this bad stuff happened to them later in the film. I think it's very telling that when Kevin's narration first shows up towards the start of the film, it very much so focuses on this idea of the family being cursed. That's what he places key, focus on in his dialogue. But then when it comes back around in the third act and Kevin delivers his second and final bit of narration, he places a lot more focus on the idea of his father and how his father pushed the brothers to be tough and to be the best. It's a very crucial step in dispelling this myth that the Von Erichs were in fact cursed, and instead taking a look at, the real reasons why all this bad stuff happened to them, because they were dealing with generational curses and these unfair pushes to be the best and to hide their emotions as men. And so the film kind of plays into this cursed idea in the start, only to then show us, this family was never cursed. It was the generational curses that they had to deal with, the very real and concrete stuff like, toxic masculinity, emotional repression that carries over through generations and really does result in tragedy more so than any, fictitious curse ever could. Basically, what I'm trying to say, in not so many words, is that the film lays out this whole idea that the family is cursed, only to subvert it with the actual content of the film. And so you as a viewer go on a journey very similar to Kevin, seeing firsthand, the family is not cursed. It is just their circumstances. It is just their social conditioning. And that's exactly what caused all this tragedy in the end. I also think it's very interesting to talk about the role of women in this film. I talked in my video essay, I said that this was a film about men, and it of course is, but to only say that it's a film about men really does ignore one of the most interesting components of the film, which is how it treats women. Specifically, its two main female characters, the Von Erich mother, Doris, and then Pam, the partner of Kevin. I will say right off the bat, I think a lot of the legwork here is done by the amazing performances given by Lily James and Morna Tierney as Pam and Doris, respectively. They each contribute to the exceptional acting found all throughout this film. I think every part is delivered near perfectly, and their parts are two that really stuck out to me in the film as being incredibly well done. Very, very good. And that's doubly impressive because the film is focused essentially on the boys, but I think Pam and Doris both come off as really sympathetic and endearing and complex characters, largely because of their performances, but also because of their role in the story, their writing, and how they act as kind of mirrors to one another in a sense. Doris represents a possible future for Pam. She is someone who married a man that was very kind of soft and emotional, and then was corrupted by life into being this very repressed and rigid kind of guy, ultimately unrecognizable from the man she first fell in love with. And now her relationship is, again, unrecognizable from what it once was. And this leads Doris to cut herself off emotionally and serve a largely domestic role for a lot of her life, I think. Obviously ignoring that she herself possesses great talents as a painter and has passions of her own. Those go by the wayside so that she can focus on supporting her family and kind of just slotting into this very boring and emotionally stagnant relationship with her husband. And this represents a very possible future for Pam if Kevin were to take on this pathway of, becoming this very emotionally repressed man like his father, following his father's footsteps. Then Pam might be slowly worn down over time until all the compassion and energy we see within her just kind of dissipates, and she becomes very apathetic and kind of, doesn't have as much purpose in her life. However, I think one of the real joys of the film is that we get to see Pam thrive, of course, off the back of her own hard work, but also in such large part because Kevin is there to support her every step of the way. He doesn't act emotionally repressed, for most of the film. He's willing to support her and talk to her and express his feelings. And I think the only time their relationship comes into real conflict is when Kevin starts to cut himself off emotionally after the passing of his brothers. It's only when Kevin is able to leave wrestling behind, understand the tragedy of repressing his emotions and why his brothers, fell to the fates they did, that he's able to come back to his relationship with Pam and build that up again, make it a happy marriage and, really support his family in a meaningful way. I especially like that while Pam is definitely there for Kevin throughout the film, she doesn't fill this all too common role for women of the, savior for men here. She doesn't save Kevin from his emotional turmoil or anything like that. Instead, Kevin grows for himself and becomes a better partner as a result, one that can rely on Pam, yes, but also Pam can rely upon him. And I think that is truly a sign of a great relationship. I love how this film ends with that kind of relationship established between the pair. I think it's very powerful. I think it's very true to life. And I just love that Pam doesn't become this character who has to go save Kevin and, bear the burden of his emotional trauma. And that basically concludes all the little additional thoughts I have on the movie. There are definitely a lot with this one, and I'm sure I'll think of more, in the weeks to come. But I think those are really the ones that stick most out to me and the ones I really did want to get in the video, but I just could not find a place for. And now I guess I want to talk a little bit about the whole process of making this video because it was a weird one. So let's just get into that. So first off, my biggest hurdle with this video was that when I originally wrote the script, the Blu-ray for Iron Claw was not out yet, which I always, have to get the Blu-ray to make my videos basically. So I basically had to script and record a video without any footage to actually edit to for like a week, which led to some very weird a very weird timeline of video creation. Basically, I watched this film. I'd watched it with my family. I had gone back home for spring break and we had watched The Iron Claw on like Prime Video or whatever. And I thought it was great. I immediately that night turned around and wrote like a whole script on it. I would refine it in the days after that and come up with a more fleshed out script that I thought was really good, that I was really proud of. And that's, of course, what you guys all heard and saw in the video from last week. But yeah, then I just didn't have footage. So I did what I could. I worked on making sure the script was wonderful. I recorded the audio. I spliced it all up in my editing software. And then I just kind of had to wait. So this led to an interesting waiting period. I tried to edit basically everything that didn't involve footage for the film. So the entire sequence in the middle of my video with all the graphs and stuff, I edited like a week or so before I even got the Blu-ray, which it was a little bit difficult to do without footage, but I knew that was something that was going to take a lot of time. And of course, it did. I feel like I'm talking about like getting the Blu-ray as if it's already happened. I'm recording this before I even gotten the Blu-ray. I'm like halfway through editing at this point, so I haven't got any of the Iron Claw footage. I've just strictly been working on footage from other films that I want in the video, footage that does not involve the Iron Claw. Which is basically the biggest lesson I've learned from this video's creation. I've had to focus on basically editing a video about a movie when I don't have footage for the movie. And that I would say has been challenging in some ways. But it's also been a very educational process. I've had to really think about what footage I want to source that's not in the Iron Claw and for what bits of audio. I've had to really plan out like what my edit is going to look like. And as a result, I think it has led me to be a little bit more creative in the footage that isn't from the film, because I kind of know at this point that once I get the Iron Claw, I'll be able to just kind of splice in the footage and scenes from the movie I need, and I won't really have to do a lot of the real legwork of editing, at least in my case, which is sourcing all this footage from other films that I reference throughout the video, creating graphics and stuff like that. So yeah, it's been kind of a blessing in disguise, I guess, in some ways. Maybe I'm just rambling at this point, but I think that is kind of the biggest challenge I've had to deal with the creation of this video, at least so far. Still working on it. But it has kind of caused me to grow a little bit as an editor and really consider what this final video is going to look like. I also do want to talk a bit more about the graphics in the video, which I'm guessing at this point y'all have all seen. The graphics were really hard to pull off. The little charts and graphs and stuff, really hard to make. Took me a ton of time, like I already mentioned, I believe. Yeah, it was just very hard to get those done. I don't have any fancy editing software when it comes to graphics. So a lot of that stuff was still frames put on transitions in my editing software, which is DaVinci Resolve. And I think it came together beautifully. I think it looks like it's professional. But just know it's all very much like probably done in a way much harder than it needs to be. Just kind of because I'm stubborn, but it does just go to show you really anything can be accomplished with zero money. I used Canva and DaVinci Resolve and I made that happen. And I think it looks pretty damn good, if I do say so myself. So shout out me, shout out you creatives watching. If you ever, encounter a roadblock like that, like, oh, I want these very professional type of graphics in my video, but I don't have any professional graphics software. I don't think you need it. You just need creativity and determination. So that's my big takeaway for this video. As of right now, I don't really have anything else to comment on with the video. Like I said, editing hasn't truly gotten underway, but I will say when it comes to script writing, I feel like the script was very good. I took a lot of time to create this one. And if I have any advice for script writing based on this video, it is really to kind of draft out where you want to go a little bit. I usually just write my scripts and let them flow. But for this one, I kind of went into it with a very specific idea of what I wanted to talk about and where. I didn't have like a structured outline or anything. But I did have a plan, and I think having a plan really helped me. One of the biggest challenges I encountered with the script is that once I finished it, it was about, I would say 15 minutes worth of footage, which I wanted it to be longer. Full transparency, I felt like I really loved this film. I wanted to do a video that hit like at least 20 minutes. So I went back to the drawing board. I was like, what can I add in here that would really make this video stand out? That would really help me articulate my point that isn't already in the video. And so what I came away with was, again, that graphic sequence of mapping the trajectory of a scene. I think it is the most unique thing in that video. And I'm very happy that I kind of challenged myself and pushed myself to make the video even longer. I think it really rounded everything out. So yeah, I think that's my big scripting lesson for this one, that sometimes you just have to, look at your script, and if you're not satisfied with it, don't just be like, okay, well, the video needs to be shorter than I want it to. Don't think that. Just really look at it and be like, what is something super unique I can put in here to flesh this out? How can I improve? Because there's always room to improve, always. So that is really all I have to say about the entire creative process at this point. About my additional thoughts on the film, I might add on some additional stuff to this video in the future if I encounter any more beautiful creative lessons in the editing process or have any great additional thoughts. But if this is the last time y'all see me in this video, bye. Thank you for watching. So full transparency, I'm filming this a day before this video goes live. I don't really have anything to add, but also like there's not time for me to add anything. So yeah, the video is good. I like it. Thank you all for the support. It's like been really successful, and that's awesome because I'm super proud of it. Yeah, that's all I have to say. Bye.